Hi, everybody. I'm Nate Wiggum. I'm with Ian Capital. We do commercial real estate capital advisory, debt and equity placement across all property types all over the country. And I'm here with Adam Greenfader.
Thanks, Nate. Adam Greenfader here, managing partner of AG&T. We are real estate developers and advisors. We focus on residential and hotel properties in the Caribbean, Latin America, and Puerto Rico.
Today, we're going to talk about Puerto Rico, but specifically in the context of bringing back critical manufacturing to the U.S. and how Puerto Rico traditionally has fit into that equation and what the opportunity around that really is today. But before we talk about the other thing that when you say Puerto Rico is kind of the next thing that people always ask about, and that's Hurricane Maria.
Where do we start? Hurricane Irma and Maria devastated the region. Many islands were affected, like Puerto Rico.
And I think you mentioned Irma, which is, I think, a really important point that a lot of people probably aren't aware of, is Puerto Rico actually got nailed by two hurricanes in quick succession. I mean, they got hit by Irma and then got hit by Maria. They weren't even, like a month apart?
Yeah, it was pretty depressing. I was in Miami during Irma. We shut down. Miami thought we were going to get a 5 category, hurricane wave. It ended up being a 3, which is pretty bad. As it is, but Puerto Rico got hit by both of these hurricanes. No location can survive, these type of winds.
Right.
We are seeing the climate change on us. Whether you believe it's man-made or just part of nature, speed and the devastation in these hurricanes, and especially the hurricanes we saw in the Bahamas this year. It's something new. We're in a new world. And really for the island, it left, most of the island without lights for 6 months and a good part of the island over a year. This is just, if you've lived in the last 200 years, I don't think you can imagine what living without electricity is like, because it also goes with no water. It also comes with no, security and safety, and the consequences of not having light is dramatic, especially in the Caribbean where the humidity is so strong, and the temperatures, at night are, can still be 85 degrees at night. I mean, it was just really devastating. And we saw a lot of unfortunate damage that maybe if the island had been built stronger, it would have avoided. But just, the numbers speak for themselves. Over $100 billion of damages, 35,000 homes destroyed, 180,000 homes damaged, thousands of people that didn't make it. I think the numbers were over 3,000 plus people that didn't survive initially.
Right.
So yeah, it was a monumental moment for the region and for Puerto Rico in particular, and it's kind of set the stage for us looking to the future.
Right. Let's talk about some of the homes being damaged. Puerto Rican building codes are actually really quite stringent, quite strong. I think even more so than in South Florida. And you being a developer certainly can appreciate this. But the real problem came from the fact that 55% of Puerto Rican homes are what we call informally constructed, which most other places we would say illegal and unpermitted and really not up to code. And virtually all of the properties that were destroyed were informally constructed. In fact, I think 98% of formally constructed homes that have been properly built to code suffered virtually no damage.
Yeah, I mean, Puerto Rico's building code is essentially the Miami building code on steroids. So, in Puerto Rico, everything has to be reinforced concrete. You need a concrete roof. You're pouring at 3,000 to 3,500 PSI. So, anything that is new survived the hurricane. When you see the images of the damage in Puerto Rico, it is that, that informal construction, basically people, friends and family getting together on the weekends, drinking a few beers and putting a second story on their house.
Right.
You can imagine what that looks like. And it's unfortunate because the Puerto Rico Builders Association, of which I've been a member for over 20 years, estimates that there's about 1 million of these homes in Puerto Rico, about 1 million informal homes. There's not a lot of building inspectors. So unlike the United States, very rarely will someone get a knock on their door from a building inspector. And a lot of these informal constructions, they connect to the electrical authorities and water illegally. So the connections were not very good. And that really led to the damage that you see, in the movies and pictures.
Right, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we're working on here, kind of unrelated to this, is bringing PACE financing to the island, which would be a significant source of capital, I think, that could be used to convert some of these informally constructed homes to formal construction. So, in the aftermath of an event like this, there's obviously a process of recovery. Given that, there's a big opportunity that Maria created to address some issues with the electrical grid. Last year, the island passed the Puerto Rico Energy Public Policy Act, which revamped basically some of the energy laws in the island and made things a lot easier with regards to upgrading energy systems, fast tracking renewable energy projects, and put a pretty aggressive renewable energy target on the island for hitting 40% by the mid 2020s.
The hurricanes, brought, first and foremost attention to the island. And up until the hurricanes, less than 45% of Americans even knew Puerto Rico had anything to do with the U.S., which is incredible. After the hurricanes, I think that number was hovering around 80% of Americans realized, hey, Puerto Rico are Americans. So that was big news and really important because, if we're part of the United States, but we can't vote, we don't have representation, then at least we can have our fellow Americans realize, that we're here and that we're part of the nation. So that was really good. And I think that on another positive note of the hurricane, Puerto Rico had been carrying for many decades these public corporations, the electrical authority, the water authority. In the 90s, it was the telephone authority. And the people, because these public agencies, provided so many jobs in general, they stood by them. They stood by, on the sidelines and said, okay, even though our electricity, goes on and off from time to time, we're okay with having the electrical authority be a public agency. Well, that all came to a really fast end after the hurricane. And I think today the people of Puerto Rico are aware that this electrical authority that has distribution, warehousing, storage really needs to go private. It's antiquated. It protects itself. The net metering was slow and still not where it needs to be. And the Puerto Rican people are now aware that power source needs to be private if it's going to be modernized. So I think that was very positive about the hurricane. And then obviously we saw the Puerto Rican people who really showed this resiliency and this grit and the ability to fight through just very poor living conditions and working conditions and continue to move forward. And so it was a moment of self-discovery and growth, I think, for the island.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, being here through COVID and all that, I think I've kind of seen the legacy of that in a positive way. I mean, kind of the quarantine's been opening up and lifting here, but, for the first month or almost 2 months, it was a very, very strict lockdown. And just simple things like if we or our neighbors, were going to the store, people would say, hey, do you want us to get you something? People were kind of looking out for each other, trying to help each other out. And like I said, I think that's people really kind of learned that resiliency in the last time around with Maria.
Yeah, by far the greatest quality of the Puerto Rican people is their kindness. When I've had tourists, over a decade visit our properties, and, I would hear always, God, the Puerto Rican people are so nice. They're so helpful. And it really is an extremely endearing quality. And when a crisis comes, they only become more helpful and more responsive to their fellow man.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely agree. In fact, we've had some experiences just driving around the island on some of the more remote parts where, we had an issue with a rental car kind of going off the road a little bit. The first guy come down the road, comes, helps us, drags us out of there. Wanted to give him all the cash I had in my pocket. He wouldn't hear of it. I mean, just stuff like that. People here are tremendously friendly and helpful. So kind of continuing the conversation of recovery, there's obviously a lot of federal money that's been allocated to the island. Eventually is coming here. Probably the most recent that's about to come here is the CDBG money. Why don't we speak to that a little bit?
The hurricane, in addition to bringing a lot of awareness, also came with some very critical disaster relief. It comes in the form of the Disaster Recovery Action Plan, the CDBG-DR, Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief is the acronym. And you can go online and find all the different programs. There really is a robust amount of money that's being separated for different areas of Puerto Rico. To this date, there's about $1.5 billion that's already run through the system. And as we speak, we are pending the second tranche, which is $8.2 billion and an additional $277.8 million. So the Community Development Block Grant funding is primarily going to rebuild housing and to help with infrastructure. It was supposed to arrive, the $8.2 billion was supposed to arrive early in 2019. Because of some of the internal political problems that Puerto Rico faced, there was a halt put on that money in order to create some better systems and to have a little better oversight on behalf of the federal government. You know, having said that, that money has already been allocated. It's coming to Puerto Rico. It will be the biggest disbursement of federal funds to the island in its history. So we all expect really big things to happen with the recovery funds, and fingers are crossed that it can, take the island and not just get it back on track, but also be able to promote economic recovery, which is really necessary. I mean, Puerto Rico has been losing between 50 and 75,000 people a year, from Puerto Rico to the mainland, of which there's about 1.2 million Puerto Ricos now living in Florida. And that has really just been a result of economic distress. Puerto Ricans love Puerto Rico. They love their island. They have their family. It's a great quality of life, but there has just been no work. So we are really hopeful that the Community Development Block Grant funding can fix what has been destroyed, but more importantly, create industry and get the economy rolling so Puerto Ricans will come back home.
Right. So, yeah, in addition to the HUD money, the Community Development Block Grants that are coming, there's other money that's been coming to the island in the form of insurance payouts, which are still happening even now after Maria, among other sources. So, like you're saying, there's just a lot of activity that's being generated around that recovery that gives it an incentive for people to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is multiple fronts that are being fought, and we are all very hopeful that the island is going to be able to, look to the next 15, 20 years of great economic growth.
Right. So we appreciate you taking the time to watch this presentation. Hope it was informative. If you're interested in learning more about the opportunities in Puerto Rico, of which there are many, feel free to reach out to either one of us. There's a link below to go to our website to download a copy of the presentation as well.